Okay, hi everyone. How's it going? Welcome to Listen Closely. This is the, I believe, 20th edition of Listen Closely. Basically, what we do every month is pick a record, pick an album, and have a little chat about it, and play it on these lovely Toby Hatchet speakers. Toby Hatchet is a lovely man from West Cork who was decked out and kitted out this room in particular, and a lot of other places like Fidelity, Hang Die as well. For some reason, Cork doesn't have a listening bar, and I'm still like, why doesn't they need to sort this out? Because we went down.
I'll have a word.
We went. This is Aoife Barry.
Hi.
Myself and Aoife did a Jeff Buckley Grace album listening parties. We actually did 3. They were so popular.
Yeah, 1 in Cork and 2 in Dublin.
Yeah, so I often put up the podcasts of the live recording. So the Jeff Buckley one actually went up today. So you can listen to that now. Not right now, please don't. That would be weird.
Please don't listen to us talking while we're talking.
Well, I'm gonna give fair warning because we did one of these last night, and this is definitely the loudest album we've ever done. And like, if you have earplugs, I might actually have to turn it down a bit.
Yeah.
People visibly jumped when I put the needle on last night because it was so loud. But I think that's just a testament to Loveless and the album that it is. 1991, a classic shoegaze album, but it's more than a shoegaze album, I think. And when you hear it in this context, in this volume, I think you'll feel like you may agree with me. There's so much going on here. There's obviously a huge backstory to this record in the first place. So, Aoife, can you tell us a little bit about the fractured process? Well, first of all, we had My Bloody Valentine, half English, half Irish.
Yeah.
Kevin Shields, although he's American born, moved to Ireland when he was 10, so we claim him. Yeah. That's fine. Colin McCusick, the drummer, Debbie Gouge, and Belinda Butcher, who does a lot of vocals, some vocals on this record. So they had an album out in 1988 called Isn't Anything, and very much like alternative rock, but you can kind of hear some of the elements of what they started to do on Loveless. And with Loveless, there was a 2.5 year process, right? What happened? Because it depends on who you ask sometimes.
Yeah, there's this great quote of Kevin Shields saying that it was 2 months of work over 2 years, which, I mean, we're all delighted with because we get to hear the results of that. But by all accounts, it was extremely frustrating for Creation, the label that they were signed to. And there was a lot of amazing stories. You'd wonder whether or not they're maybe kind of enhanced a little bit, but they're still kind of amazing. Not amazing in a good way, I suppose, with people involved, about the frustration around the fact that they were going from studio to studio to studio, because they basically were going to not very expensive studios to start recording this record. And when they were there, they also recorded 2 EPs as well too, Glider and Tremolo. And Kevin Shields is obviously a perfectionist, and anything you read about him, he's someone who's really into how things sound, how he wants them to sound. And there are interviews where he was saying, that they were in studios by train stations, and that the rumblings from the trains were causing the strings on the guitar to make a sound that he was picking up. And so he'd ask them then, could they move to another studio? So they were kind of moving from studio to studio, around 18, 19 studios in the end across the 2 years that they recorded the album. But as we know from the idea of them doing 2 months work, they weren't going into the studio every single day and making this huge body of work. And he actually was the person who played most of the music on the record. Colin Morkiosog did one whole track himself and then played some live drums. And then they also did some sampling of his drums because he was kind of unwell and couldn't play all the time. And Belinda Butcher only came in to do the vocals. So there's a lot of waiting around for the band members as well. And
Kevin Shields said they were happy doing that, happy to wait around.
Presumably they were getting paid some money by Creation.
He says that the way that it worked was like, he's like, you'd be surprised how many people don't play on their own records. And that was his excuse for why other people don't play on why other people in his band aren't playing on his record, the record that their name is on. So 16 different engineers were involved in this record. And I would say he had a hate-hate relationship with engineers, Kevin Shields. He didn't like them. He didn't rate them. He thought they were pure technicians mostly. If they served the job, and the job was often pressing a button or showing them how to use a computer in the early days of 1991 when this record came out. Well, 1990 or 1989. The in-studio computer. The famous story in one of the studios is with the curtain drawn and the engineer in the mixing room not able to see what was happening behind the curtain or hear it. The only thing they could actually get was the meter shifting and seeing whether something was actually happening. And there was a reason for that, right?
So basically, if you picture this studio and you picture this vocal booth and there's like a curtain in front of it, so you can't see anything, maybe you can see some like shadows moving in the background, and behind the curtain are Kevin Shields and Belinda Butcher recording the vocals for this, which would then be like tracked multiple times and giving us this beautiful sound where we don't even know if it's Kevin Shields sometimes or Belinda sometimes. And meanwhile, you have the engineer sitting out there watching the meter. And the reason why this is happening is because Kevin Shields said afterwards that there's a thing in quantum physics where if you watch something happening, it changes what that thing is. So he didn't want them to be watched while they were singing in case it changed what it was, which I thought was amazing. I mean, I'm sure nobody was imbibing any substances or, you know, in any tired frame of mind. There was a lot of tiredness. They were like experimenting with staying up really late and, you know, kind of getting into dreamy states and putting Belinda Butcher out of bed early in the morning and making her sing so that her vocals sounded really dreamy.
So you know, there's like key characteristics of Loveless. One of them is that thing, exactly, the enforced method acting, where they'd be in the studio all night and Kevin, seemingly bloody-minded, would go and wake her up and say, right, just sing something. And whatever came to mind, she'd sing. So, I mean, I was looking actually yesterday at the Genius page for the lyrics.
What on earth does that say?
There's a couple of songs you can detect, you can hear what they're saying, but a lot of it you obviously can't hear anything what they're saying. You can make out your own. It's a bit like the Stick a Roast, the way they had the Hopelandish lyrics. They just made up lyrics in a different language, and there wasn't even Icelandic. The other key characteristics of this record are that it was made in mono, which unusual at the time, because you know we're talking. Everyone's get access to the stereo. We're talking the early days of CDs. The fidelity, the stereo quality of CDs were much coveted by bands and they wanted to sound their best. Kevin Shields decided, no, I want this album to sound like a live album, because when you go see a band, presumably, you know, we now get a lot more bass live and treble maybe than we did, and a clearer sound at gigs. But maybe we're thinking about a regular dive band, kind of dive bar show, a lot of mid-range, a lot of like, in terms of frequencies, everything is focused in the middle. In terms of this record, what that means is that a lot of it is not using the effects of the day, stereo effects, chorus effects, things that would brighten and widen the sound are not here. Everything is shoved in the middle of frequencies and they're fighting. And it kind of means that this record has this interesting haze to it, this like gauzy texture to it. You're kind of looking through this fog the whole time. And I think, that the cover is very evocative for that as well. I don't have synesthesia, but if I did, I feel like that would be the color, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That and purple. Maybe I do have synesthesia.
Definitely.
Dark purple.
Yeah, like I think that's one of the things I really love about the record, that it is in mono, even though I think when I first listened to it, probably about 2000 or so, 2001, I wouldn't have been able to say that at the time. Do you know what I mean? But I just knew it feels like it's in a tunnel. You feel like it feels like, you know, a really old, distressed 35mm film that you're, you know, viewing something by. Like, it's got all these beautiful kind of visuals with it as well as the sounds. And the fact that the vocals are like in the middle with everything else, and they're so dreamy and they're so kind of multi-tracked and they're so played with. And the guitar has got, you know, you've got that kind of glide guitar that Kevin Shields is famous for playing, using tremolo while he's playing and kind of like experimenting as he's going and playing it through pedals and stuff. It all gives you this dreamy sense of like,
he played a lot of open tuning kind of chords, so like basically allowing the physicality of the strings to kind of define how it would sound, and it would sound different every time, because you know there are different tensions, they just sound totally different each time. So
different tunings and stuff that he couldn't remember and things like that.
Often had to kind of reconfigure and figure out how he did that in the first place. So obviously, like My Bloody Valentine are playing in the 3 Arena on November 22nd. So it was my idea to do this, and I know from doing it last night, it's totally worth it, because this is going to be a very different experience to the gig. The gig is an approximation of, like you said, does he remember the open tunings? It's been a long time. It's been a long time. 1991 is a long time ago. So, but I felt like, and I'm right because I haven't experienced this last night, it's a very unique experience to hear this very loud. I gave the barman a fright last night.
Oh no! These people next door are going to have some.
Yeah, I've already warned them. Actually, there's 2 people there. I was like, "This is very loud, by the way." So if you do want to wear earplugs, fine. I won't. But my hearing's already fucked, so it's fine.
Do people have their earplugs at the ready?
You'll be grand anyway. Don't worry about it. But
you can send a letter to Niall when your hearing gets affected.
What else will we talk about before we press play? Yeah, so I mean, in terms of, again, with the production stuff, people would talk about, because there's such like a wall of sound, if this album, like shoegaze is often talked about in terms of like sonic cathedrals of sound. If we're talking about shoegaze, this is the La Sagrada Familia. It took as long.
It took as long to make,
in relative terms, but is it ever really finished? Was it ever really finished? 2.5 years. Yeah. So Kevin says about the idea that people think there's so many guitar overdubs on this. There are very few. A lot of the bigness of the sound has to do with the fact that I use a lot of open tunings. A lot of the chord progressions are quite basic, but the open tunings leave a lot of room for odd variations of a basic chord. The open strings clash against the others in interesting ways. Then we sing simple melodies over the top. But as sometimes what people mistake as lots of guitar overdubs are just these inversions of the chords mixed in the way I use the tremolo arm, they create a sort of overdub effect. So in terms of some of I have a full timeline here, but I won't go through it because you can read about it on their Wikipedia page if you want. I will say Alan Moulder is the one person. He's actually listed first on the credits of the 18 people, which includes 2 of the band members here. He's the first person credited as an engineer on this record because he clearly was trusted by Kevin Shields more than any of the other engineers. And you might ask, how much trust did he put give to him? Yeah. Well, he let him mic the drums.
It's a lot of trust.
This is Alan Moulder, who went on to produce the Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails.
Melancholy.
Yeah, big records.
Huge, yeah.
Kevin Shields trusted him very little.
Well,
but still enough.
It's still enough. And Alan Moulder has some really good interviews if you go back and read them as well too. He's quite nice about the whole thing. He kind of seemed to accept that he was dealing with someone who was really specific with the vision of what they wanted to achieve, which is really cool. And he just kind of let him. And he was also the engineer that would come back and forth. So he'd go off and work on.
It probably helped that he had other work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean? He was getting
some of the engineers in the studio were told not to come in. Don't bother coming in. We've no work for you. You get paid.
Well, look, if they weren't good enough, then they didn't add to this magnificent record.
Yeah. So the album was released on Creation Records. Alan McGee, many people would know as the label founder.
Yes.
And there was a real push and pull between these two, Shields and McGee. A lot of it had to do with the fact that for 2 years, Kevin Shields wouldn't let Alan McGee listen to any of the music that he was making, even though he's paying for every cent of it. So there are different figures out there. 250 grand in 1991 is a lot of money. Kevin Shields disputes that, but he seems to say it wasn't far off, really. And he says a lot of the money went on his living expenses, which, fine, but also studios cost a lot of money, especially if you go into 19 of them. So I think there's probably a lot of money spent on this. People were getting very stressed in the label. There was a guy called Dick Green, who was second in command, basically suffered a breakdown. He was the one that had to ring Kevin Shields up and beg to hear something in the first place. And his nerves got the better of him. He would open the mail in the office and apparently it was shaking a lot because he was so stressed by this situation.
Oh God. He was 28, 29.
He was 28
as well. He was really young.
Apparently he went grey overnight. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a good story. But it just showed you the level of stress that was involved in this.
Crazy.
So, when it comes to talking about Alan McGee, there are basically this idea that the titles of some of the songs are direct, and even the title of the record is a direct riposte to Alan McGee's request to hear the music. Yeah. First single was called Soon, when is the album coming? Soon. Second one was called To Hear Knows When. Yeah. Album is called Loveless. This album came out and Creation dropped them shortly afterwards, having spent all the money. I don't know if they made their money back originally. Probably over time they have.
Yeah, you'd wonder. And I mean, and I think Alan McGee, whenever he's talked about this record, or Kevin Shields, he's never had particularly nice things to say about him. He's been, very... I think it kind of left a legacy with him. But obviously, Alan McGee's a fascinating, colourful character in his own regard. So he's not exactly somebody who wasn't like creating his own hassle. And I think Kevin Shields would say stuff like, well, at the time, the label understandably wouldn't have had a huge amount of money. Creation wasn't, you know, in the red and the black and the red. Which one is the better one? Obviously never gambled. But they weren't doing very well money-wise.
Or
and obviously, exactly. And he went on to sign Oasis, and obviously a couple of years
he
later.
did all right.
So he
did
made his
all
bank
right.
with that kind of music.
Super for animals as well.
Yeah, but I don't think they're sending Christmas cards to each other, Kevin Shields and Alan McGee.
No, probably not. But yeah, so I think it's maybe time to play on the record. We've got 48 minutes of music after 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It's wild, some of it. We call it a shoegaze record. In many ways, it's not. In many ways, it's an ambient record. It's like there's a lot of sonics going on here. There's a lot of different things. There's not a lot of structure sometimes. I love...
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying?
And then it's like really pop and like Phil Spector, beautiful music, you know, melody. Like that's what grabbed me when I first heard Only Shallow, you know, in my late teens, being like, oh my God, as somebody who loves melody and vocals, was like, this is amazing. And then delving in and finding all that, what you're talking about there too. So extremes on it, but all together, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Sorry, interruption.
No, absolutely. That's what you're here for, to interrupt me. So I don't have to speak.
It's my job tonight.
So it is going to be loud. Let's just play it and enjoy it. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Loveless, everybody. My Bloody Valentine.
How are the ears?
I feel like we should all clap or something.
Yeah.
Thanks. The silence was killing me there. Especially after hearing a record like that. A very loud record. That song is soon. There's a few different tracks on this that are very poppy, like you said.
Yeah.
That is, to me, is the one that speaks to me a lot. I remember hearing that and seeing it actually. Orty used to do the beatbox on 2FM.
Love the beatbox. Who else loved the beatbox?
2FM and TV at once. So they played a music video show. I remember seeing the video to Soon.
Oh, cool.
Probably when I was about 10 or so, I'd say, after the album came out or around that time. So 9 or 10. So kind of thing you're exposed to when you're young because they're Irish. Yeah, it's no surprise after listening to that Kevin Shields and Belinda Butcher got tinnitus during the making of this record. I mean, imagine listening to that stuff all the time, all day in, all day out. So you kind of go a bit mad, wouldn't you?
Yeah, there's definitely, Yeah, it's kind of otherworldly. Do you know what I mean? It's like really, really, really intense, obviously, when you're listening to it this loud. But I even feel like my ears are blocked, even though I had earplugs in. It's very otherworldly. It kind of brings you
There's
into
a lot of rumbles there.
Yeah.
You can hear a lot of rumbling.
Definitely. And like sudden shifts where it's like super loud, then it's quiet, then it's super loud again between the tracks. The tracks are, like don't kind of meld into each other or give you a lot of time to breathe in between them. You know, and I really like that there's that element of like surprise on it. And then, like you're saying, there's those beautiful pop songs as well too in between. It's like it's such an amazing kind of achievement, and I think especially if you go back and listen to their early stuff, because they brought out a lot of EPs and kind of a mini album before the first record Isn't Anything, and like seeing their sound progress from like a band that almost had like Smithy influences and really felt like a kind of slightly, you know, good but slightly derivative maybe band.
Yeah, I would say
this
Isn't Anything as well
amazing.
has some of this, but
yeah,
not
definitely. I really like Isn't Anything,
like
but yeah,
this is full sonic cathedrals all the way through.
Yeah, definitely. Like even if you go to the Glider EP and you listen to that, which obviously has a song on it, and the difference between that and the other EPs, you're like, oh, holy crap. Like, and this is all around the same time that they're making, like something shifted. And I think there's always something about like, people talk about Kevin Shields as this like, you know, Brian Wilson style character. Like he's obviously not very Brian Wilson, but he is a, you know, you could say a musical genius like Brian Wilson. Yeah. And there are interesting elements of his personality and his life and stories about him and stuff. But that kind of personality and that sense of musicality and perfection might have been probably very annoying for a lot of people, but it resulted in something that sounded amazing and exactly how he would have wanted to sound. But then there's a big huge gap between that one and the next record.
I mean, so
is perfection bad?
Creation Records dropped them pretty much straight away after spending $250,000 on them and then being like, we can't work with this guy anymore. Obviously he did the record eventually, we got there, but obviously difficult, and he talks about this himself, how it was difficult for him to work on music and be happy with it. There's a quote here from him when he talks about like how he didn't make more music. That balance of feeling, energy and ideas all together, it didn't happen that much. I'd love to find a way. In fact, I'm hoping I can in this period of time, but I don't know if I will. That's the sad part. I'm trying to figure out a way to gain control over myself. I'm trying to train myself like a horse I can ride, because I feel happier when I'm productive, and I would like to be happier, so I'd like to be more productive. I mean, not doing things is quite soul destroying. So he was trying often to do stuff, but after the album came out, they signed to Island Records. The exact amount of money they supposedly paid for the album Creation did, they signed for that advance. Built a studio in London. But, you know, guess what happened? Things weren't quite right. He wasn't happy. Kevin Shields wasn't happy with how things were there. And he says he went a bit mad after that and found it very difficult to follow up the record, like I say.
It's a funny thing, I think, with like success, like creative artistic success. If you make something that everybody is saying is absolutely unbelievable and it is game changing and it kind of, you know, brings the shoegaze sound to a totally different level, and also it's not replicated by anybody. Like there's loads of shoegaze albums, but nothing sounds like this, right? There's like a huge amount of pressure on you to then follow that up with something amazing. And if you're already a perfectionist, how do you ever even get to that level of knowing if what you're making is good? And if the circumstances in which you made it are 2 months of work over 2 years, like you can see how that must be really confusing and strange and weird from an artistic point of view. And there's some mad stories around of like that record studio you're talking about in that house of like, you know, people would say, oh, there's all these chinchillas running around the building and they had barbed wire outside, you know, and they explained apparently there was a chinchilla there, and the barbed wire was to make sure people couldn't climb over into the house or whatever. So there's all these kind of mad things happening around them while the myth and like the quest to make the follow up, you know, to Loveless. And I always kind of feel sorry for people who have a load of success with something artistic, because it's so hard, like, you know, to strike gold again. And us fans are going to be analysing things even more deeply when the second one comes around.
For sure. The band kind of ended up drifting away after this, you know, waiting for him to kind of do the follow-up. Colin Mulcusick went off and started a band with Mazzy Star, or Hope Sandoval. Hope Sandoval and the War Inventions from Mazzy Star, obviously. And Belinda Butcher left. Did she start a band as well?
I think she did some, but she didn't. She wasn't super.
Snow Pony, I think. One of them was
I think that was just Debbie Googe, I think. Just Snow Pony.
Sorry,
yeah, she was involved with quite a few bands.
Yeah. There is one of the quotes I want to read out, which I forgot to mention earlier, about them being in the studio, and really like the idea that it was, they were trying to avoid the rock cliches. And a lot of the engineers were kind of annoyed and pissed off with them for doing that. So they're talking about the track 3 there you heard, Loomer, is Colm McCusick's song. So they sampled a lot of his work to play on the record as well. And Colm is talked about in this interview with Kevin Shields, and just briefly saying, Colm was always a very important musical partner. He was with me on it, even though I was leading it. He was getting it very quickly. That's why it was a bit of a disaster when everything went horribly wrong for him at the beginning of Loveless, which led to him not being on much of that record. But he still stuck with me. He only disappeared for a few months. He was the one who'd worry about how to use the computer and the sampler, which allowed me to be a bit more free-minded. But he could see what was good quickly. And I was writing the music and playing all the instruments, so I guess Debbie and Belinda, playing-wise, never really had a role, but they didn't mind. Are you sure about that? But because it allowed the music to develop in a much more free way. If you're in a band and everyone's competing to have their parts heard, things don't happen. So that was the good side of it. There didn't have to be bass. There didn't have to be guitar. There didn't have to be vocals. Anything could happen. It wasn't done in an egotistical way. I wasn't thinking, I have to do this all myself. But it's quicker to do it as you write it. If you have to write it and say, here, learn this, then get a sound. It's too slow. It's not spontaneous. It's quite common in the studio. A lot of bands, you'd be really surprised. A lot of people in bands don't actually play their records. So yeah, one of the situations where the engineer got really annoyed was when they sampled some of Colm's live drums. So he's already playing these patterns and we recreated them. We had some problems with the engineer though. First engineer walked out in disgust because he wouldn't listen to anything he had to say. We were trying to mute the drums so they didn't sound like rock drums, and he was saying, that's terrible. That's not rock and roll. And we said, well, we hate rock and roll. It doesn't sound natural, he said. We said, that's exactly what we want. So he left.
Take that. There was a story about somebody in a studio as well. Something happened to an instrument and the engineer, it was a speaker or an amp or something fell, and the engineer went and put out his foot to stop it and then broke his ankle.
Oh, okay.
So there was those kind of cursed stories as well. It
was cursed.
From
some things that people have said about Loveless over the years. Brian Eno said, MBV Loveless set a new standard for pop. The vaguest music ever to have been a hit. Simon Reynolds in Melody Maker called Loveless the outermost, innermost, uttermost rock record of 1991. He also cited Your Self-Esteem by Mercury Rev that year as well. It's particularly interesting. Guitar Magazine, clearly a lot of guitars in this record. The deep focused Dreamtime music seemed to invite far-fetched atmospheric metaphors. A shortwave transmission from a distant galaxy, a faded palimpsest barely visible beneath an old painting. In the New York Times, John Paradise says, straightforward may be the last word most listeners would use to describe the band's current Loveless. The songs sound molten, edgeless. Both the beat and the vocals are inundated by noise, some of it from guitars, some of it from less definable sources. Within the clouds and swamps of sound are 3-chord rock songs, and the words sung earnestly. But the focus is radically different from most rock music. And then finally, Ira Robbins in Rolling Stone, 1982. A challenging storm of bent pitch, undulating volume, and fractured tempos. Loveless has a calm eye at the center, an intimate oasis from which guitarists Belinda Butcher and Kevin Shields gently breathe, pretty tuned into the thick, sweet waves of droning distortion. You're right, though. It is like there's no album really like it, and even in the shoegaze canon, the closest you get. I mean, I don't really know what the closest you get is to something like this, because it does stand alone.
Yeah, because you can hear obviously a band that came before them, like Jesus and Mary Chain. You can hear all that kind of distortion mixed with the beautiful melody of the vocals, and which is really interesting. And you can hear a band like Ride really clearly with the kind of, I think, the vocals a little bit like, and definitely the guitars. And then I think you can go all the way up to somebody like William Basinski, his record, The Disintegration Loops. I keep thinking of that too, where you have that idea of Kevin Shields loving the sound of a tape disintegrating, or like things taped a bit weird or sounding a bit weird. He had these albums that he liked that were kind of a bit warped, and you can totally hear anybody who has wrestled with a cassette tape and it warping and you having to get out the pencil and fix it or whatever, will recognize that moment in that record. He really replicates those. Yeah,
that's kind of the bending,
the bending of the notes,
guitar
and the chords
notes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so it does
I love that to it. Like, that's so much so much texture.
Yeah,
so much texture to it. So I really love that about it.
Yeah, it does make me think about what the gig is going to be like. It's their
I've
first
never
gig
seen
back.
them live. You've seen them?
Just at Electric Picnic. I presume, have people seen them before? Hands up. Yeah, a few. Yeah, okay. Not as many as I thought. Okay. But I think they're doing Primavera as well as the other big one. But the Dublin Day is the first big one back.
It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. And they famously do this Holocaust section, which, maybe we shouldn't be using that about sonics and sound, but, kind of pummeling noise that becomes ambient over time, is difficult to stand beside. They're notoriously in a live context a very loud band. Kevin Shields, of course, disputes that. He said, I did see them at Electric Picnic. They weren't that loud, but it was at a festival. And my friend fell asleep during that section.
Kind of white noise vibes. I remember when the last time they toured, all those tales about like, there was my eardrums broke, basically, like everybody just getting so stressed about it in a funny way. And I kind of like that they're really like confronting that. They're like, you're going to come to our performance and there's going to be a section where we're going to try and blast the eardrums off you, and you're just going to have to sit there and take it, and we're going to watch while you react to it. Like, I like that kind of confrontational element as much as I would want to be standing at the back while that was happening.
But I think it is a kind of a meditative thing as well. Like, exactly. I often think of like Mogwai, some of the stuff that Mogwai did with this kind of stuff. There's actually an amazing Surgeon remix of Mogwai song from years ago that's very much like on this level. It's kind of this building chords of noise, and I remember when we were much younger listening to it in the dark once, and it was my granny was living in the house at the time, and she came in and was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, just listen to this music. It's obviously...
You don't get it, Gran.
It was a bit scary, though. A bit scary. But yeah, that's Surgeon Mogwai. There's also an amazing Andrew Weatherall remix of Soon, which I couldn't find the record of today. Haven't quite... Yeah, it's in my 12-inch section somewhere. I couldn't find it out. But anyway, I was going to play it. But anyway, that was the plan. The next record we're going to do on the 26th of November is a very different record. We're doing Outcast Stankonia featuring Miss Jackson and So Fresh So Clean and B.O.B. Bombs Over Baghdad. That is turning 25 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so scary.
It's hard to describe how much So Fresh So Clean was absolutely everywhere when that record came out. Like, there's probably
Jackson
children called So Fresh So Clean because of that record.
It's a great record. It's a very different record to this, obviously. But that's the plan. And then in December, we'll do some sort of, I don't know yet. Last year we did The Strokes. Is this it? So we started, because it'll be Christmas week, so we usually do a louder, not louder than this, or like more fun, energetic album, I would say. So I haven't figured out what it is yet. We're vacillating between loads of different options. So I'd love to hear your choices of what you'd like to hear. You can drop me a line or just talk to me afterwards. Absolutely fine. But yeah, that's it. Aoife, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great.
I really appreciate it. And everyone else does too. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, no, when I was in college, I had Only Shallow as my theme tune for my radio show.
Oh, really?
Which was over 23 years ago. So it's actually really weird to kind of come full circle and be a grown-ass adult talking about this album now. So thank you for listening.
Well, do we ever really grow up? It's fine.
No, it's the answer.
So that was Loveless. Thank you for coming to listen closely. I'm going to play some more records for a little bit longer. Stick around if you like. Thanks for listening.
True.